Fortunately for my computer skills, but unfortunately for my attitude, I am a millennial. And as a millennial, I've noticed that our generation, and I don't want to say we're the only generation, but my generation has made a science and an art out of uniting under the problem rather than the solution to that problem. We love uniting around a problem. So when it comes to the issue of taxation, in this presentation, I hope to present to you the problem, that's the easy part, but the solution, which is the unpopular part. This approach to uniting under the problem is as effective as cockroaches, because as soon as someone turns on a light, we scatter. In the darkness, we unite. As soon as someone lights a candle, here's the solution to that problem, we're gone. We just have so many different ideas of how to solve the problems that we unite under that nothing, unfortunately, gets done. A popular banner and a fun internet meme that I love inserting to every conversation is one that we unite around many times and often is taxation is theft. I love inserting that to every conversation I have. Taxation is theft. It's a fun internet meme. It's a wonderful thing to tell your children. Unfortunately, it's not biblical. And that's the part I think where we as Christians need to approach it correctly. Compulsory taxation is theft. The Bible never comes out and says taxation is theft. And if we start establishing policies off internet memes, as funny and partially true as they are, unfortunately, when we get down the road, tyranny is adopted. Step one, cursing the darkness. This is the easy part. We all know what the problem is. March 22nd, 1985, Roman Haas, a chemical company not far from here in Philadelphia, sent the IRS a check. In response to this wonderful extortion check that the Roman Haas sent to the IRS, they responded, they sent a $4.5 million check to the IRS. The IRS, in turn, responds by sending them a tax penalty of $46,000 or $47,000, if you will. That's the response. Hey, thanks for the $4.5 million check. Bam! Tax penalty. After 5 months, 5 accountants, 7 letters, at least 2 personal visits, they found out the problem was 10 cents. 10 cents. That was the problem. So instead of the check being $4,488,112.88, it was supposed to be $4 million, $488,112.98. You know what's funny about that? What's funny about that is the problem could have been that instead of 88 cents, maybe it was supposed to be 78 cents. And they still charge. I mean, that's just as likely. You gave us too much money or you gave us too little money, you're still going to get the penalty. That's how the IRS operates. No apology, no explanation. The IRS issued none. They just dropped it and said, hey, whatever. So that unfortunately did not stop the tax problems for Roman Haas. They still continue to have problems down in the future with the IRS, as many people, I'm sure, in this room can attest to personal problems with the IRS. I'm going to put 4 women up on the screen for you. You know what they all have in common? They were all evicted, they were all elderly, and most of them were widows. Now, I cannot get behind any sort of Christian explanation of a tax system that persecutes widows and orphans in their distress. True religion helps widows and orphans in their distress, right? We have instituted a tax system that persecutes widows and orphans in distress. Oh, but it's the voice of God, so it's all okay, right? That's what we say. I'm a big movie buff. I love watching movies. Sometimes Hollywood, by accident usually, comes up with some pretty interesting ideas that are not as well put in other circles. So Frank Underwood says, this is a career politician. After he has an argument with a lobbyist, Frank Underwood is a career politician in Congress. After he has an argument with a lobbyist, he says this about the lobbyist as he walks away. He says, he chose money over power in this town, a mistake nearly everyone makes. Money is the McMansion in Sarasota that starts falling apart after 10 years. Power is the old stone building that stands for centuries. I cannot respect someone who does not see the difference. I'll come back to that quote a little bit later. This is from A Bug's Life. This is a fictional character, Hopper, right? The grasshopper. After he unleashes an avalanche of food onto his friends who were trying to convince him to return back to the anthill to take their food. Actually, they were trying to convince him not to do it. We have enough food to last the rest of the summer. You don't need to go back. Let's just stay here. We'll get it next year. Hopper begins to consider it. But after he engages them and humors them in their idea, he unleashes an avalanche of food and kills them in front of their friends. He then stands on top of the mound of food and says this: "You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. If they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life." Okay? But this next quote where he says here, I think he nails what's going on and what the IRS is all about. It's not about the food. It's about keeping those ants in line. Those two quotes, what they have in common, I think many Christians, when they approach the IRS, they think they're just trying to get our money. From the Roman Haas example and from those evicted widows, it's not about the money. They're not trying to get your money. They're trying to control you, and they're trying to destroy your way of life. They're trying to steal money from your children so that they can control you. It's not about the money. Otherwise, we wouldn't have had that Roman Haas example. 10 cents, who cares about that? Really, I'll give you 10 cents right now. I'm sure the accountants could have pulled it out of their pocket and put it in some sort of weird vault or whatever they have. It doesn't matter. This money doesn't exist anyway. Now, in this example that I'm going to give, we have to understand the difference between power and authority. The IRS has the power to take our money. This is an argument that we hear very often here at the Mid-Atlantic Reformation Society. We often ask the question, what's right, what's wrong, says who, and by what standard? We also try to always draw the distinction between what is power and what is authority. Here it is, Romans 13, this passage here that justifies, in many people's eyes, abundant wickedness that destroys people and their heritage. Now, in this passage, there are some obvious questions that we need to ask when we talk about taxation. It says that the authority is there to punish the wrongdoer. Now, the wrongdoer, who decides what the wrongdoer is? Is it you and me? Is it some government official who decides what's right and what's wrong? What's wrong with not being able to afford taxes? What's wrong about that? What's immoral about that? I can't afford taxes. What's immoral about that? At the end of this passage, it says, pay taxes to whom taxes are owed. Who decides that? If we render to Caesar what is Caesar's, does his face on my chest mean that he owns me? Or on my house? Or on my fiancee or my friends? A problem with that approach is we don't have Caesar's face. We have Washington's face. We have Lincoln's face on our money. How do I give to Lincoln that which is Lincoln's? Or Benjamin that which is Benjamin's. Right? How is that possible? I think what we can all agree is that Christ was being a little bit more deep than just taking things at face value, pun intended. Now, the Bible says, evil men do not understand justice, but those who seek the Lord understand it completely. How is that possible? How is that possible that people who are wicked do not understand justice, but those who seek the Lord understand it completely? Maybe because we have the source of justice, namely the Bible. The reality is, if we don't pay our taxes, we lose our house, we lose our car, we lose all of our possessions, and then we go to prison. That's the reality. Now I'm going to present a scenario to you if you just metaphorically close your eyes for 1 second, okay? Now, if you were to lose all of these things because you didn't afford taxes and you're being carted away to prison, and most of the face of American Christianity, as you're being carted away, they'll just kind of look at you helplessly and say, Romans 13. It's the voice of God, right? All authority is from God. It's the voice of God. I can't do anything. Romans 13. I got to submit. It's an unconditional. From Romans 13, if you read that, it's unconditional. It says submit to the governing authorities. There's no condition there. Got to submit. Now let's say tonight you get knocked on the head, and the next morning you wake up, and you're in a different world, but you don't know it yet. So you pay all your taxes come April, but you forgot to pay your tithe. Or maybe you just didn't pay your tithe, right? Let's have a look-see at Hebrews 13. Do not neglect to do good and to share what you have, for such sacrifices are pleasing to God. Obey your leaders and submit to them, for they are keeping watch over your souls as those who will have to give an account. Let them do this with joy and not with groaning, for that would be of no advantage to you. Does anyone see a condition on there? You got to submit to your church leaders too. What's the condition? Only if they're Christians or if they're righteous or if they have a godly church? What's the condition? There's no condition. You've got to submit no matter what, right? So here's where the scenario comes in. You wake up and you just have a bruise on your head. You wake up, you didn't pay your tithe, and now the church shows up to your house, and it's not the IRS. They take your house, they take your car, they take your possessions, and you go to ecclesiastical prison rather than status prison. And as you're being carted away in the car, because the ecclesiastical police kicked down your door and did a raid on you. This is not the police, state police. This is the church police. Because they did a raid on you, you're being carted away in handcuffs, and all your friends can say is, Hebrews 13. Got to submit, right? Do I not owe God my money more than the state? More than the civil authorities? Is that not more important? Is there not a stronger argument to support that system than the status system that we have now? We are being inconsistent in our approach to this. Here's somebody who is. That guy is consistent. Hats off to him. Unfortunately, I don't have a hat because I'm not insecure in my baldness. But will a man rob God? Malachi 3:8. He's a non-tithers board. He's starting to get it. He's starting to get it. Got to be consistent in both approaches. Now, we have to light a candle. We have to talk about the solution to the problem. Identifying the problem is the easy part. What's the solution? What does the Bible say about the answer? Taxation must be voluntary. I think a great slogan to unite under is make taxation immoral again. Make it immoral. Or rather, I should say, make dodging taxation immoral again. We need to know the difference between what is illegal and what is immoral. The Bible never identifies not paying your taxes as illegal. There is no penalty attached if you do not pay your taxes. Israel had a voluntary tax system. If you read, I'll ask you a quick question. What's the penalty for me if I envy somebody? What can the state or the church do if they say, Luke, you have envied. Now we get your house. Why hasn't God attached a penalty? Clearly it's a sin. Taxation must not be tracked. I've heard an argument from some people that say, well, there are examples of people being punished for not paying tax or tithe in the Bible. Okay, granted. Let's say that's true. Now we have to do a system where we have to track people who are not paying tithe. Let me ask you this. What's the penalty if I don't sign up for that system? What can you do to me if I don't sign up? Now the crime is you haven't signed up for our system to track your tithe. What can you do to me, biblically speaking? I believe, biblically speaking, this is the solution to the problem of taxation. This is the biblical approach. No penalty, must not be tracked, and it must be voluntary. Just like tithe. What do you think is more influential in the world? The church based on tithe, voluntary giving, or the United States? Some might think that if taxation were voluntary, then nothing would get done. Some people will say to me when I say that, well, no one would pay your taxes. Hallelujah, nobody would pay their taxes. You're right, because we don't believe in this system. We absolutely don't believe in what's going on. Does righteousness exalt a nation or not? This is the Future of Christendom conference. Think and reform, that's our motto. What happens if everyone becomes a Christian? What if you woke up tomorrow and there was a reverse rapture? What if all of the people who hated God, did not believe in Him, were taken and there were only Christians left? Would our institutions change? Will we know how to redeem them? I submit to you that tomorrow, if there was a reverse rapture and only the Christians were left, we go back to the same institutions again, churning out, which are designed, any institution that is not from the Bible is designed to churn out wickedness and wicked people. If there was a reverse rapture tomorrow and you woke up and there was only Christians left, we would go back to the same slop that we're doing right now, churning out wickedness. The problem is that it's not that we don't have the right Christians in office. That's not the problem. The problem is we have set up institutions like the IRS that are designed for the purpose of wickedness. Here it is. This is the one that we kind of accept as gospel as we go to work every day and pay our taxes. But in this world, nothing can be said to be certain except death and taxes. Many times we say that and quote that and wrongly attribute it to some dead president. But apparently it's from Benjamin Franklin. I've heard arguments that he took it actually from somebody else, but it usually goes back to Benjamin Franklin. I submit to you that when it comes to death and taxes, the same person, if I could just leave you guys with one thought, the same person who conquered death has also conquered taxes. Thank you very much.